Okay, this one is an interesting one actually. I see people talk a lot about this from time to time. What are the obsessions about gacha games to try to be difficult? Are gacha games supposed to be challenging? I'm a relatively new and casual gacha player. Started a couple of months ago with Genshin Impact. Move on to Honkai Star Rail, and then try a few others including Nikke, Blue Protocol. That's not really a gacha, but I guess fair enough. Snow Broke, and Reverse 1939. I didn't really think much about the difficulty in these games because for me, it was more about collecting characters and having a chill time. Yes, I cleared all the endgame content in Star Rail, but that felt more like a natural progression if you have played for a while. But then, I started playing ZZZ, and wow, almost all the discussions and comments on Reddit and YouTube are about the game's difficulty. It's too easy. It must be more difficult. Many times, these conversations turn into, my game is harder than your game debate. Uh-oh. Wuthering Waves is harder. ZZZ is easier. We have seen that thousands of times before. Always, alright? There are even specific videos that try to prove whether the game is hard or not. Alright. Very interesting. So my question is this a common thing in gacha games? Are people actually playing them for the challenge? And is that the main appeal? I understand that some people like a challenge, but it feels like some people expect a Dark Soul challenge in gacha games from day one. I think challenge is more like people like to flex, right? They like to flex their abilities in solving the game's hardest content so that they can show off to other people that they are skilled. This happens in Genshin back then in like, oh, I can beat Spiral Abyss Floor 12 without spending money. And then it started to become like a trend somewhat. Alright, people are trying to like do it free to play, no pool. Some people even do, okay, I'm going to play the gacha game, no pool. Alright, 0 pools. All the pools, I'm just going to save it. I don't know why they play gacha games, but I'm just going to save the pool. 0 pools. I will only use free characters. Wow, I'm so good, man. I'm so good. But yeah, it is a trend. It is a trend that they're trying to be so good at the game, right? But is it fun though, right? I think it's good content-wise, alright, to do content for like, I get it, right? So Pokemon has this as well called Nuzlocke, and people like to do those things, challenging, like try to challenge yourself. But it's like, most people are not going to do that. Of course, people that like challenge, they can always do stuff like that. Defeat the purpose. Defeat the purpose. Masochist people wanting hardcore difficulty. But yeah, I think majority of the players, the casual players, they don't really care about that, right? So there's that. Most people just want to play the game, use the characters they like, etc, etc. I think I speak for the majority of the gacha players. Most people don't really care whether it's like use what character, as long as they can beat the stage. They just want to be able to beat the stage and get the rewards, ideally, right? In most situations. But yeah, so this guy is basically, it is a good point, right, that he's bringing up, that a lot of people are trying to bring up the difficulty thing in a gacha game, and ideally gacha game and difficulty just doesn't really make sense in a way, because it's just difficult, right? Especially like, number one, you cannot balance things, and it's hard. Number two, it's always going to be power creep. So in the end of the day, no matter how hard a game is, like once a power creep character comes out, like it just invalidates your weaker characters in a way, right? Like if you're trying to be able to basically solve certain things, feels like mental illness. I don't think it's mental illness. I think it's more like kids or people without much things to. So a lot of kids, like I'm sure you guys have experienced this before, right? If back then maybe you were younger, if you are like 16 or 17 years old, you want to like, this is probably like the biggest achievement that you have, to be able to get an achievement in a gacha game or in any games, right? Like for a kid, this is a big achievement. For an adult, you don't really care about this, it's just a game. But for a kid, this is actually really huge. Like kids like to be able to flex this to other kids. It's something that matters a lot to kids, because most kids probably they don't have a job yet. So this is probably their biggest accomplishment in life, alright, for a kid. You think PGR endgame was the most difficult endgame? And a lot of kids, teenagers, and probably like the young adults, right? I would say this is like something that they can basically be able to, it's something they can hold on to, alright, as part of their accomplishments. Not all players have the same goals, is why majority of the content is pretty casual. But then endgame moods exist specifically for this type of players. Okay. When you talk about difficulty, it is like my endgame is harder than your endgame. Hard endgame is not that good because it becomes a question of wallet and not skill. I mean, when there is no dupe system or signature weapons, hard endgame is cool. Like super bosses in another Eden would be if that game introduced PT system. Last Claudia. Okay. Remember Tower of Fantasy launch, everyone praising its difficulty, and then surprise, it turned out to be a whale playground when low spenders could only be healers. I don't remember that as well. Casual Genshin and Honkai Star Rail endgame is balanced around 5-star characters without dupes or signature weapons or max 4-star characters. Anything harder will raise the same pay to win problems. Pay to win. You think games should have really challenging content but don't lock significant rewards behind it. Give stuff for people to challenge themselves but not turn off the casuals with FOMO. Then they won't, that's the thing though, they won't design it because then it wouldn't incentivize the developers to design it, right? I think the developers know, right? Like for example, why is there no, like for example in Genshin, why are they not designing like a harder content for Spiral Abyss? I think because they know Spiral Abyss 11 and 12, not many players play it. Like they can basically look at the data, that's why they didn't design a higher endgame. So if you say, okay, let's just put more endgame in the game but there's no rewards, it doesn't incentivize players to do it. Would players actually do it though? Right? Like how many of you guys here would actually, let's say not Spiral Abyss, right? Let's say any game, Honkai Star Rail or Wuthering Wave, right? Let's say they add even more floors for the Honkai Star Rail Memory of Chaos. They add even more floors. They add stuff in Wuthering Wave as well. Even more floors, the Tower of Ascension. But they don't give rewards. Would you guys play it though? Just for fun? I don't think many players would. Because if there's no rewards, would you guys care? Most people probably wouldn't care. If there's just more floors, okay, let's just play for fun. It's harder, but I think the audience that actually cares about those are super niche. That is just not worth for the developers to spend time. Because remember, the games is a game, right? For us, it's a game, but for them, it's a business. They are there to capitalize, making money. So when you hire people and the developers are basically wasting time designing something that not many players are going to do, in the end, they are sort of wasting money in a way. Just leave it later, nothing to do, only play. I think most people are just gonna ignore it, I feel like. If you don't care about rewards, might as well play a non-gacha game. Yeah, I feel like it's hard, right? So you put rewards, then the people are going to get stressed. If you don't put rewards, then nobody's going to play. So ideally, that's why the rewards are usually there, right? Because it's sort of to incentivize or encourage players to play. Hey, play this Memory of Chaos floor 11-12, play Spiral Abyss floor 11-12 because there's rewards right there. There's Primo Gems and, you know, premium currency to be had. I think if it's zero, nobody is going to play it though, sadly. Easy, kids steal their parents' credit card, buy stuff. Damn. Plenty of players have different goals, like those that want to just collect their favorite waifus or husbandos, 100% explore everything for completion, lost story keepers invested, and those who want to challenge themselves. Most content is pretty easy since the majority of the player base are typically casuals, but the entire point of endgame content is for players to have something to do or strive for after they are done playing the main content or events. It should be the reason why players invest or build characters and properly test them out. For example, Genshin is an exploration game that's tailored towards casuals to mainly explore Tavian, but it also has a great combat system that opens up for complexity thanks to reactions. However, the endgame content like Spiral Abyss isn't particularly hard enough to challenge late game players or veterans that want a challenge due to it being designed as a time attack to stall players from beating it in time due to enemies being HP sponges, which is true, right? Like it's just all about how, it's basically the design is how fast can you do this, right? Basically there's a timer there. If you beat it within this time, you 3-star it. Spawning in waves across the field and or built-in stall mechanics like waiting 10 seconds for Magu Kenki to get up that just wastes time. The issue is further dragged out by limiting viable team comps like double Pyrolector in the current Abyss, we are heavily incentivized to run 2 Hydro to break their shields in time. No idea what that is. Sounds like annoying. You gotta run 2 water characters. And yes, I'm aware of the Imaginarium Theater, the new endgame mode in Genshin, but to make a long story short, it's heavily flawed mode that undermines the strengths of Genshin's combat system, while not even being particularly challenging. About as easy as floor 9 or 10 of Spiral Abyss, the actual hardest part is meeting the character's requirements to even play it, since you are locked into specific elements and forced to use 4-star characters every time. Plenty have already made it clear about its issues in more detail, and even Hoyoverse have came out to acknowledge that they messed up and will improve it. Okay. I occasionally watch casual streamers who don't play the game seriously, and it's no wonder a lot of gacha don't focus on difficulty. Watching some streamers, I discovered new movesets from bosses in Genshin. Many of us forget that a lot of people on Reddit or other social media platforms are not your typical casual. They aren't the main target audience. We, not everyone obviously, have been farming relic, artifact, or discs for months or years. We are the tiny minority. If those hardcore players put as much money as how loud they yap, then maybe we could see more content being tailored towards them. If you yap, but don't care about spending, your opinion is inferior to the silent majority who spend to look good and don't care about endgame. Stats don't lie. I agree. I do agree. A lot of people yap about wanting more difficult stuff, but I bet you the people that want more difficult stuff are the people that don't really spend money in the game, because they care about difficult content and they are usually free to play. So I do feel like, yeah, this is probably true. This is probably true. To a lot of extent.